Hello everybody and welcome to episode 7 of our community service hours tracking system.
We've created a password reset function for our system before the login page. And we did that using our app URLs, adding these four. And we've created 4 new HTML files: the reset, the confirmation for that, input your new password, and then finally to show a success message for the app. Also adding in our settings our email stuff by going into Google, turning on 2-step verification, and then adding an app password for our mail. And today's episode is actually the most important one, because in today's episode, we are going to go over this NewHours function right here on my mouse. So quickly, I'll go over what this function will do. So basically, as you can see, we have a place to log our community service hours. We'll have a date field, and we'll add a specific calendar widget here, which makes it look a little bit cooler. You can type in your hours, which is only going to let you type in a number. And then finally, we have a text field, which is just a description here. And all of these are marked with a star, which means that they're required fields. So for example, I can type in something like a beach cleanup right here. And once I log this, it goes into my hours, which is actually going to be on the next episode. But today we're just highlighting this function that allows us to input some information on this NewHours page. I want to quickly go back to this chart that we showed in episode 1 of this series. And as you can see here, the function that we're going to create today is in purple on my mouse right here, which is log new hours. And as you can see, it is the catalyst for all the reports that we're going to have in the future. And it also links this whole cycle together. So following our methodology, let's first get started with the URL, which is which URL link this page is going to be on. And so if we head back into our code, I've added this line right here. And so for our first user function URL, we're going to define this link as post/new/. This is actually just the back part of this URL, which basically gives it its name. Next, we're going to add which view we're going to call, which is simple. I'm just going to call this NewHours view. And we haven't created this yet, so that's why it's underlined in red. So that's totally normal for now. And then finally, we're going to give it a name to make it easier to call this function in our code. So I'm going to call it postcreate. Now let's continue this process and head over to forms. We're going to add our NewHours form, which is actually called a model form. Now, why is it a model form? Because we're going to be creating this form from our models, meaning that whoever submits this form, we must keep that data and save it to that specific user. We want to know who submitted what form. And this way we can make reports off of it. We can track each user and what they've submitted. And finally, and more importantly, we save their data. So in the future, they can go back and see it. And that's why if we go back to our finished system and go into my hours, my logs are still here and they're not just one-time thing and they're gone. And so this is just going to be a model form class. So I'll call it NewHours form. Something simple like this. And if you're wondering why it's underlined in red, which means there's an error, it's because we haven't imported the model form function from Django. And we'll do from Django.forms, because it's a form, import model form. And this should be lowercase. So now we'll write what is in this class. So in this case, we're going to add this code here. And I'll explain this. Our model's name is going to be called post. Next, we want to have 3 fields, which are the service date, hours, and the description. And our service date actually is going to have a special widget. And it's going to be called the date input widget right here. And this date input widget is already created, so this way we don't have to reinvent the wheel. So as you can see right now, there are 2 things that are underlined in red, which means there are errors. And that's simply because we haven't created or told this function right here what these things are. So now let's think about what our post table should include. So it should have, as you can see here, some basic user information. This way we can track which user and their information and who posted what. Obviously the hours, a description, and the service state, which are all three of the fields that we've just created in our forms right here. We want these to be saved in our database. And also there should be a field called date posted. And we don't need to show this on the front end because to the user, that is just useless information. But on the back end for the support, it's useful because you can see when this post was specifically created. And so with this, let's create our model now. So this should be class. We'll name it post. As you can see from our forms, we got to keep this consistent. And then this is just a basic model. So models, a model. And this should be uppercase. And now let's think about what specific rows we're going to have in this table. So what are we going to store? Well, first we're going to need the user information. So we'll call this user. And right now I won't write anything on the right side. Let's just list everything that we need. Next we should have hours, and then description, service date, and then also date posted. So these four should go in our post table. So next, let's think about how the information that goes into each of these rows, how is it going to be derived? So for our user, we already have that. So how do we link our user table to this table? So how do we link that model to this model? The foreign key, which means on the other user table, so for this one up here, for each specific user, so each row in that table, there's a foreign key that is generated for each user. And we can link that foreign key down here to this model. So that way you can link both of these tables together without creating a new one. And I'll show you what this means and I'll draw it out real quick. So in this very quick drawing that I just made, and I know it's not good, but it gets the point across. So we have user 1, user 2, user 3, and they have the IDs 1, 2, and 3. And so with our foreign key, when in our post table, it will only show which user in the terms of their ID posted what. So it won't tell you that I, Stephen Howe, posted 4 hours for beach cleanup. It will tell you that user 1 did this. Now, who is user 1? We don't know this, but the computer does. Because if you can link their ID with the user in the other table, so these two go together, you can tell exactly who this is. So ID 1 would be user 1. And then you can just display user 1 on the front end. So it looks like this. Looks like I did that. So back to our code, this should just be models dot foreign key. And then we'll add the parameters later. For hours, this one should be easier. It is just going to be a integer field. The description is different because you can have numbers in it, but you also have to have letters. So this is what is called a char field or character field. The service date, although we're using a widget, it still contains the same feature, which is to tell when this service date was. And so this one is just going to be a date field. And date posted is also a date, but we also want the specific time. So this is model.datetime field. And now let's add the specific parameters for each of these. So for our user one, we want to link this to the user table. And also for the user, there's a specific thing we need to add to address the issue when you delete a user. Because for example, if I put this in terms of a social media app, if we delete a user, we should also delete its comments, right? Because we can't have a deleted user still commenting on others' posts. That wouldn't make sense. So this is actually just an on delete command. And we'll do models.cascade, which means it also is going to delete all the references that this user has. And you don't need these two parentheses. Next, we have our integer field. Now, for our integer field, we can name this something that will show up on the front end. And so for our integer field, we're just going to call it hours because that is what it does. 0 add hours. Next, we want to add some validators for this field. So let's add this code here. Validators equals, so the max value will be 999 and the minimum will be 1. So no 0.4 hours or no 0.5 hours, only whole number in hours. And also, as you can see, we need to import this into our models because our code does not know what this max value or min value validator is yet. And again, this is already created for us, this max and min validators function. So we just need to import this. So it's from django.core.validators import max value validator and min value validator. Next, same thing for our character field. So we'll name this description. And for this one, we should also add a validator, but this one is going to be the length of the character field. So we can't have someone write an essay in the character box because that would take up too much room. So let's just limit this to 200 characters. That seems reasonable for just a small description. Next, for the date field, we're going to name this service date. We should have a default value because if the user doesn't put anything or input anything, we should show the date today. So we'll just do default value, which is just default equals to date.today. And again, we need to import date into our models. So it's from date time, import date. And actually, we should add date time because that's the next one as well. For our date posted value down here. And for our date posted, we don't need to show this on the front end, so we don't really need to give it a name here. And so all I need to add for it is the default value again. And this will equal to timezone.now, which is the time right now. And for this import, it is from Django.utils import timezone. After we've posted something, what happens? Does the user stay on that screen? Well, let's check it out. So if I have 2 hours and I did animal shelter help, and I log this, I get redirected. So we need to add this redirect function. What we're going to use is called a reverse reference. And what this does is just going to reverse us to a new page or redirect us. And we obviously need to import this. So this is from Django.urls because it has to deal with the URL, right? You're going to a new URL when you redirect someone. Import reverse. And this is basically all that is in our models because we've covered everything. We've covered which rows we should have in our table and the parameters for it. And also what we're going to do after we finished uploading this essentially to our database. And what we're going to do is redirect. Next, we'll end this with a view because we need to show this on the front end. But this view is very simple because unlike the other ones, this page is essentially just our form, right? We just need to make it look a little bit better. So all we need to do is just show this form basically. And we can do that very simply with this code right here. And this is very simple. It's just a lot of writing. So I'll just explain it real quick. We're going to call our view class NewHours view since our form was called NewHours form and the model we're using is called post. We're going to create a new HTML template in a second called L_NewHours. And for our parameters for this class is going to be login required mixin because the user has to be logged in order to access this log hours function. And also a create view. And so what this create view is it just creates an instance in the table in our database. Next, we're going to add a def function down here. And we're going to set this created log to the current logged in user. So this way we make sure that When a user creates their log, it actually goes under their account. And now let's make sure that all these errors are gone, meaning we need to import stuff. So first, let's add our parameters, which is login required mixin, and our generic view, create view. Next, let's add our model post from dot models import post. And finally, let's add our new hours form. And we already had this up here. So we'll just add it to the back of this. So it's new hours form. There we go. For our views, we need to import this view here. From dot views import, and this is going to be a long list. So we'll add parentheses, and then the first one is called new hours view. We also need to add imports for this post model and our data input. So up here under from dot models import profile, we'll add post. And then we'll also have to add our date input. And for our widget date input, it's actually going to be another class. And so since we want this to carry over, this actually has to be on top of this new hours form class. And so this code goes like this, very simple. Date input class is just a date input form. And the input type is just going to be date, very simple. And for a redirect right now, we don't have post my yet. So I'm just going to redirect this to the home page. So now with this created, our URLs are working, our forms are fine, our models are created. Since we're done with our .py files, let's migrate this real quick so we get these changes into our database. So if you got to do this, you go to Tools, Run Manage.py task, and you want to do Migrate, and then Make Migrations. Next, SQL migrate, your app name, which is ours, and then which one it is this time. So last time it was 0002. And so this time you should also do 0002. And then finally migrate it one more time to save these changes. And as you can see in our migrations, we have another one. And it is successful. So now we can create our HTML file. So this is called L_new hours. And delete this code here. Our new hours page should look very similar to something that also has another form, such as our profile. Now, obviously, it won't be this intense because we don't have to have a profile image or first name, last name. We just need to show this form. So if we base our code off of this, and now I'll show you the real code for our new hours, it should look very similar. So this is AA_base. And as you can see, we have loading our crispy form tags, which will make our forms look a little bit better. And then we have our content section. In our content section, we'll have the title of this page, which is new hours, our form right here, which is very similar to this profile one, as you can see. So we're displaying that form that we've created. We have a log button, and that's basically all there is. If we look at our finished product, you can see them. You can see these components. So first we have the name. We have our form. If I can highlight this. Well, the form is just service date, hours, and description. And we have our log button. And obviously all of this is in a box for from our content section. So now our HTML is done as well. So let's think about it. We have our URLs, our forms, our models, our views, our HTML. So if we run this, it should come out, right? So let's run this on our local server. And we have not added this to our main menu, but if I go remember our URL name for this page was post/new. So /post/new. As you can see, this page has come out here and everything is working fine. Our widget is working fine. We can only type in numbers in this field. In our description, we can do characters and numbers. Everything is shown here. So now let's just add this page to our menu so it's ease of access for our user. And this is very simple because if we go back to our base, we already have this created. We just commented this out. And this is going to be this first one right here. Just uncomment this and we're done. I refresh this and NewHours has come out on this menu bar. And now if I go, let's go, I did this servers maybe 2 weeks ago on Saturday, the 6th. I did it for 4 hours and I did tutoring. And I log this and we are redirected to our homepage because this is what we wanted. Remember, we have no My Hours page yet. And now I'll take you into our database just to see if this actually went through. So let's go and refresh this real quick actually. Just click on a random table and refresh it. Our hours post comes out and we have one post right here. As you can see, our hours, our description, our server state is the date, and our date posted is the exact time that this was created. And our user ID, which is 4, matches our user table, user 4, which is the one I'm using actually right now to log into the system. So this means that everything has gone through smoothly. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. And in today's episode, just to give a brief recap, we created this NewHours page with a server state hours and description function. We can log this and it will go into our database and save it under that user. And in the next episode, we're going to be creating our My Hours page. So something like this, where we have all the hours of the logged in user. We won't do reports quite yet because that will be an episode in the near future, but we will be able to list all of our logs out. And a unique function, actually, if you click on this, you can update or delete this. But obviously that will be in the next episode. Today, we got a great start by adding this NewHours function. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode and I'll see you guys in the next one. Make sure to stay tuned for the end of this video for a special announcement from Red Cat Shop. And see you guys next month.
Right now I'm in Indiana, and as you can see, it was snowing here the past few days. So it's important that you get your Red Cat beanies right now, which are available for sale at steamandhow.org. And thank you for watching this video. And in the next video, we will go over episode 8, which includes My Hours.
Up the